It's about 6:38. Like I said, thank you all for joining us on time. My name is Ebony Rose Thompson. I'm the chair of the Ward 7 Education Council. I want to make sure I recognize and Zinga has stepped away, but I want to make sure I recognize the board members we have on the call. I'll give them a moment to introduce themselves so you know who they are. Uh, Laura,
Hi,
do you want to start?
I'm Laura Fuchs. I teach at HD Woodson for the past 13 years, and I am the recording secretary. And I'll be putting the draft minutes from our last meeting in the chat.
Maxine or Nzinga? I see you're both on.
Hi, I'm Maxine Elbert. I also teach at HD Woodson Senior High School. I'm a special education teacher, and I am the parliamentarian for the Ward 7 Ed Council. Welcome.
Nzinga has stepped away, but she is our corresponding secretary. So if you got an invite today, Nzinga did that. So October is always our annual meeting. Typically at our annual meeting, we recap the year. And this year is probably super different than any other year. So it's really strange to look back. So we'll take a few moments just to review what happened this year. And then we have what I think is a good discussion about kind of virtual learning, and we have a couple panelists. We also have some of the new principals on the line because it seems like every year we actually get a couple new principals, and we want to make sure people know who they are. We'll give them a chance to introduce themselves, and Councilmember Robert White will be joining us. So we have a decent amount to cover. I expect it'll be a good meeting, and I'm going to jump right into the annual report to make sure we have time for everything else. This is the first time I've never had to print any copies of the annual report, which is great for me. So our annual year goes from October to October. So if there are things you're like, hey, I think that happened, it might have happened in September of last year. Let me scroll down. I don't think we need to read like the whole statement, but there's always a statement. Essentially, our statement is that we'll stay committed to advocating for Ward 7 schools. We know this has been kind of a crazy year, and we started the end of last year in a pandemic, and then we entered this year in a pandemic. So there's a lot that we couldn't have possibly prepared for. But I will say that as an Ed Council, we've done our best to kind of be responsive to the needs, both focusing on education quality, but also now kind of having to add this dimension of safety in a way that we hadn't had to think about it before. We actually started last year. Our first meeting was about safety. We had our first panel in October was with four actually gentlemen whose charge is safety for students. And we're not talking about COVID, we were talking about violence. Unfortunately, within a couple of weeks, we had 3 shootings that hit pretty close to home. One of which was someone actually driving down 49th Street, which passes Kelly Miller, Aton, and kind of ends at Ron Brown. And one of those schools was actually hit. Unfortunately, no children were hurt. So we invited out the Office of Neighborhood Safety, MPD, the Office of the Student Advocate, and Training Grounds to talk about what resources were available to families, to students, and what different initiatives were in place. We found it very difficult for everything to be in one place, so we tried to create a space for that. During that time, we were also working with the OAG and DME to try to come up with a safe passage initiative for Ward 7, which is largely focused on how children get to and from school safely. Last year, we also did a school fair. Our school fair was in November, and it was at the newly modernized Kimball. We did invite all of our Ward 7 schools, and we had a lot of parents attend. We thought it was a great way to really showcase what we have here in Ward 7. We know that some families do choose to go outside of the ward, but we also want to make sure that people take a look at their neighborhood schools first. There's a lot happening in Ward 7. We actually have some great school leaders on the line. Like I know I saw Kareem from Stokes, and they were in attendance at the fair. And I know most families, if they don't have to travel, they won't. So we put this event together for that purpose. Washington Met was also this year. I feel like some people have forgotten about that. But Washington Met, even though it is in Ward 1 physically, most of its students actually come from 7 and 8. Those students found out their school was closed, was proposed for closure, and the proposal did go through, but we did our best to at least attend those meetings. And I know like Laura and some of the WTU members fought really hard to make sure that their needs were met, because a lot of the issues that Met face, they weren't the fault of the students. It really was a resourcing issue. And we didn't feel like DCPS was offering them anything new or different with the proposal outside of moving them out of their physical building and dispersing them through the city. On a happier note, we did do our annual principal meet and greet and holiday party. I think this might be our fourth year doing this. I don't know what that's gonna look like in December with COVID, because I can't imagine it's nearly as fun. I guess we can have a Zoom party or something, but we take the time each year because by December we are all meeting out just to bring people together. We believe that principals are people too. And unfortunately, most principals only get to meet parents if something has gone wrong or they want something from the school. And so it's great just to meet our school leaders, have them come out, make sure people know like who's leading their schools. Because if you can have confidence in the school leader, that changes the ball game as far as what you expect from that school. So we had a good time. East River Family Strengthening Collaborative did sponsor that. We grew out of our space at Salatai, which is a good thing. And so we moved down Benning Road to the Chateau, the infamous Chateau. And these are just some pictures from that event. Also last year, we started the process for a new executive director for the Public Charter School Board. Scott Pearson is the only executive director the Public Charter School Board has ever known. So this is actually a really big deal. There are 7 different entities that govern public education in DC, and the Charter School Board is one of them. They are the authorizer. They think about policies. And the next person in the seat is a really big deal. So we took some time with both people who came to that particular meeting, but also just to do a survey and see what people wanted in the next executive director. We were able to work with the Public Charter School Board, and they incorporated our survey results into their search. I think that as the Ed Council, we've gotten really good at thinking about how do we open up processes so more people know and can participate. And this was one of those times. So they have chosen a new executive director. She was at our September meeting. I believe her last name is Dr. Walker Davis. And we'll look forward to getting to know her better. We also participated in different panels and events. This is one of them. Don't Mute DC had their first annual conference back in the fall. And they actually talked a lot about just the systemic inequities, which was a great opportunity to highlight things like our feeder patterns, things like at-risk funding, things that really shape the way our schools look, instead of just talking about this is what's happening on this particular day. Because a lot of the challenges our schools face have really been built over time. And so this was a great opportunity to take a backwards look and say, how did we get here? Including everything from school closures to redrawing boundaries. We also this year invited out all of the reporters. We always get questions about what makes it on the news and why aren't we telling more positive narratives about our kids in our schools. These are 2 of the people who make those decisions. So we brought out Perry Stein and we brought out Amanda Gomez, who actually works for the city paper. And they shared kind of what they covered over the year, which was helpful because just like this, we're like I totally hadn't thought about Washington Met until I put this proposal together. Put this report together. But they came out and they also like got suggestions from us as far as what we would like to see covered, which I think is really important. In addition to talking with people about how do they pitch things or how do they get things covered, and like the different ways you can interact with the reporter. So maybe I might have a reporter call me and I might not feel comfortable being quoted, but I can definitely lift something up and say like, here's the context you should know. And a lot more, and if the reporters have more context about our stories, even if people don't feel comfortable being quoted, I think the stories would be a lot more true. And then budget season, per usual. So we started this year with DCPS saying that they were reconsidering their comprehensive, their formula, their budget formula. They are now starting to present that, but budget season was interrupted this year because COVID hit right in the middle of it. So we did our usual go down and we fought for things like at-risk weights, making them higher. We fought for per pupil allotments. We fought for dollars for mental health, and we fought really hard for dollars to close the digital divide. What ended up happening was we did see increases to the per pupil formula. We did see some increases to the at-risk weight and some dollars for mental health. The council actually did not fund the adequate number of devices per student, which we're facing now and seeing now. But they did put in more money than the mayor had allotted originally. So we'll keep going back year after year, making sure our students and our schools get what they need. Then COVID hit. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to be letting somebody in, but I can't. COVID hit, and we were appointed to the Mayor's Reopening Committee. I served as a representative. We were actually one of the few community, we were the only education council that got a seat on that committee. The other community representative is Kathy Riley from SHAPE. And we worked with the WTU asking for more community voices, like teachers and like principals to be appointed to that committee. I will say that as a committee member, I'm not so sure I can say it was the most inclusive process I've ever been a part of. But we did our best to fight for things like PPE for all students and educators, raising the issues of health personnel, having adequate health personnel, and then just making sure that there's a safe and inclusive reopening plan. That was back in April. And now we're at the beginning of October. And I'm not so sure as a city we've achieved any of those goals. I feel like we're making a lot of the same asks. But we did our best to lift those issues up. In absence of a more public process, we did our best to survey our constituents. And so we developed our own, like when I found out what the questions were, we turned them around and we sent them to people, and they became a part of the official record, because that was the best we could do for that process. And so we'll continue to watch school reopening. We do have Robert White joining us tonight. I hope people lift up what their experiences have been. And I know Nzinga, quick plug, sent out the link to testify at the hearing tomorrow. Testimony is closed, but you can still submit testimony if you would like to. We actually also I'll add this, we're contacted by a donor. So we've been able to donate laptops to schools because we did not get this fully funded through the council or the mayor's office. There have still been a lot of needs at schools. So we're trying to figure out whatever resources available to us to do our part to close the digital divide to the best of our ability, and make sure as many kids as we can help are served during this virtual learning period. And then we just went all the way virtual. So we have been having, quick plug, we've been having meetings. Our first virtual meeting, I think, was in April. We've had the chancellor, we've had Mendelson, We've had the new executive director of the Public Charter School Board, and we'll continue to meet virtually until we can go back in person. We are now uploading all of our meetings to YouTube so people can watch them later. Shout out to the person who goes back and watches the 2-hour Ed Council meeting later. But we're doing our best to adapt during this time as everybody else is. And that's it. I'll stop there. I don't know if anybody has any questions around the annual report. Okay, no questions is fine with me. And so if there are no questions, I'm going to admit that I don't know all of our new principals yet, not by name. So Nzinga might have to help me. Do we have our new principals on the line? Because we were going to have them introduce themselves next.
I think I saw, sorry, I know my audio is weird. I think I saw the rep from Community Schools at Sousa.
Yes, I'm right here. Hi. And we have our 2 APs who are here to introduce themselves as well. So I don't know if you want us to go first or if there were other folks that you wanted to go before us.
You all are awesome, and so you all should go first.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Diana Tejada, and I am the Connected Schools Manager at Sousa. So my work focuses on family and community engagement and making sure that everything around our scholars and our families are taken care of so they can move from a space from thriving to surviving. We handle the rest. And I'm coming from doing previous work as a TLI or a teacher leader at YSC, or the Youth Services Center. And I have also been in education for over 10 years at some capacity. And I'm coming into this work with a lens of community organizing, specifically grassroots community organizing, to make sure that we're bringing the power and putting the power into the hands of the people. And we have our 2 APs who are also on the call. We have AP Green and AP White. So I'll send it over to AP Green next.
Good evening, everyone. I am AP Green, although it says Pascal. Green is my maiden name, and DC normally takes decades to change your name. I am the assistant principal for STEM as well as 8th grade. This is my 2nd year at Sousa. However, my 1st year serving in the capacity of assistant principal at Sousa. Previously, I was assistant principal at Cesar Chavez, Capitol Hill. And prior to that, I served on the secondary level, grades 9 through 12 in DCPS, specifically at Washmet. So that was a little heartbreaking to me when I saw that they were closed, as well as Eastern Senior High School. You're on mute.
I was about to give you guys this whole grand introduction. I'm glad y'all called me off mute. Good afternoon. I'm Tiffany White. And this council actually just speaks to my heart. I'm actually a native Washingtonian. I actually went to Houston Elementary School as well as Roper. Any old people on the phone? No, Roper? All right, Roper. Hey, Natalie.
Hey, Tiffany. You don't have to unmute to say hi.
We went to college together, so I love Natalie. But yeah, so I am a native Ward 7 all day, and so went to college here, went to Georgetown University, then came back and served in Prince George's County Public Schools for 10 years, and then came into the wonderful District of Columbia Public Schools, where I've served as assistant principal, instructional coach, as well as instructional specialist on the central office level. The majority of my work actually has been with Ward 7. I worked at Kelly Miller as the academic dean, went over to Stuart Hobson for some time, and now I'm back on this side here serving the wonderful folks of Ward 7 in the Sousa community. And so I'm just so excited to be working with you guys, and in any way possible that all 3 of us can help and support, please let us know.
Awesome, thank you. I am looking. I don't know if I see any more of our new principals. So, but I do see our panelists. So I think it's okay to just change stuff around and we'll move to the panel because they're here. I see Allison. Um, and I see, tell me if I'm totally butchering your name. Is it Bashay?
Bashia.
Bashia. See, thank you. So I see Allison and I see Bashia. I'll let you all introduce yourselves because I already messed up a name today. And we'll start to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm happy to get started. So my name is Allison Kreiner Brown. I use she and her pronouns. And I have a first grader in a Ward 7 DCPS school. And so she's 6, turning 7 next month. And I have a 2-year-old. So I'm running daycare and distance learning over here. And also I think relevant to the conversation is I have for more than 10 years, I've done family engagement through a community organizing and racial equity perspective in DC. So I've been official partners with schools in every ward except for wards 3 and officially 7. But I'm constantly talking to people around the city. Just finished actually doing a focus group with Ward 8 parents about distance learning. And so I'm coming at this both from my personal parent perspective. Oh, and also my school, we had a parent town hall last night. So I'm going to be sharing my own perspective, but also just trying to echo some things that I'm hearing, particularly east of the river.
All right, and good evening, everybody. My name is Bashia Imana, and I am delighted to be here. Thank you, Nzinga, for reaching out to me. And just thank you to this incredible council. It's so powerful when we have folks coming together about the well-being and the nurturing and the uplifting and the empowerment of our community and definitely the support of our children. I've been an educator for over 25 years. I started in Prince George's County Schools where I taught for 13 years. And then when I had my first child, I actually came home and I became a homeschooling parent for several years until DCPS called me to come in when they started the impact program, and I was a master educator for DCPS for several years. And Ward 7 was by far one of my favorite places to be in. I hung out a lot at Kimball and Stanton and Plummer, but I've been in every single school in Washington, DC. A lot of times when I have friends and they say, well, I want you to meet me at this place in DC, I'll say, what school is it by? So I'm very, very familiar with DC public schools. After I left DC public schools, my husband and I, Dr. Kwao Imana, we started our own school. And so we have a academy in Prince George's County. And that, because of COVID, that school that was local has now become an international school. We have children all across the country. And now we've got folks, children that are learning even as far as West Africa and East Africa. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm really here, not so much to, I really want us to have a conversation and for me to be able to give you the support or maybe answer some questions that you may have about perhaps homeschooling or how to make this virtual education a lot easier. So I'm glad to see that we have principals and school leaders and community leaders here, because I want to be able to support you all in giving support to your students and to the children in Ward 7. Another thing that I do right now is I do virtual teaching. So I'll talk a little bit about what that experience is like too, and maybe offer some tips and some tools to make that easier for teachers.
And I have permission from the Ward 7 Ed Council leadership. I'm gonna invite one more parent on the panel who I know she and I feel like we've been in a lot of conversations recently, and I know her voice is really gonna be important for this. So Brittany, Wade, why don't you introduce yourself and jump in too?
Hello, everybody. Brittany Wade. I'm a Ward 7 resident. Y'all hear my loud children in the background. I have 5 children. I just recently, they were all in DCPS at one point, but I just took them out of school, and me and my husband are homeschooling right now. So I'm just here to give my input on how I see fit.
Okay, Brittany.
And I would just like to add, I just saw Wilson Baker come up on the line. So so my husband is also here. So I'm gonna follow your lead, Allison, and I'm going to also invite Dr. Kwao Imana on the call with us.
Peace, family. My name is Kwao Imana. How you doing over there in Zinga? Like everybody here, we're here because we're concerned about the proper education and upliftment of our children. We've already faced certain conditions just coming into COVID-19 in terms of equity and giving the right access, right information, right teachers, right orientation, right perspective, and right love that our children need. And then this has compounded another element within, or another variable within this equation that we're seeking to solve, is how do we properly educate our children with all of the necessary skills and love and elements that they need to face not only the academic conditions that we find ourselves in, but the emotional, the stress, the overwhelming, the burden, the frustration, the anger. A lot of families are dealing with a lot of issues just in general, but then coming into this type of situation where we become the first one laid off, you know, and therefore having to deal with those realities. And then one of the things that we do is that we have been getting access into the school systems and then seeing where the gaps are and then seeing where we can fill those gaps. So we're just here as part of the collective unit working for a collective solution to solve the collective problems of our community.
All right, I think that's a good place to start. I will say that we don't have that many people on the phone tonight. We're hovering around 30. So I think that with that size group, we can make it as conversational as possible. That's not too overwhelming. We want to keep it pretty informal. I'll ask, and I guess I'll start with Allison, because you mentioned you were at a parent meeting last night. Like, what are you seeing, hearing, experiencing? Like, what comes to mind with the virtual learning?
Okay, so a few things. One, particularly when we're talking about Ward 7, and I'll add Ward 8 in there, when you want to talk about supporting students, we have to talk about supporting the basic needs of families. You cannot put that to the side. I know the mutual aid networks have been doing a lot. I know there are a few initiatives happening east of the river, but you know, we had parents at our school talking about they're trying to find housing and having trouble finding a place that will, you know, accept their vouchers. We have a lot of people talking about they can't take off work to come and do the food pickups. Like, you can still pick up free lunch, but you have to come during working hours. So we're trying to figure out, can we set something up where people can, you know, someone can go pick things up and deliver it to other people. There are so many basic needs, and you know, I definitely want to say, and I've been very, very aware that, you know, for my household, you know, my husband and I still have our jobs. We haven't yet had to worry about, you know, are we going to be able to feed the kids today? We haven't had to worry about, you know, paying bills or where we're going to live. And this has still been enormously stressful. Like, it is astronomically stressful in different ways, and in a lot of ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So for instance, not only do our kids miss and need, you know, their friends, you know, they miss the socialization. When they're on the screen, they can't talk to their friends. They're talking to the teacher, they're responding and answering questions, but they don't really have free time to just like talk and engage. And they use those last like 30 seconds of, you know, say bye to everyone, that they're like, you know, bye Thomas, bye, you know, like they're really, really craving it. And so I know some people have tried to set up, you know, either kind of just outdoor one-on-one play dates here and there. But there are a lot of people who, you know, just even just trying to set something up and keep our kids engaged just in their own learning, not just in distance learning with the school. Like, we are, as parents, quite frankly, are doing our best. And I can tell you with the 2-year-old, I can't keep track of, and you know, my husband is just coming out the busiest time of the year for him, but like, I can't keep track of everything that's going on. And every time she comes downstairs where I'm at with the 2-year-old, I don't know if I should fuss at her or if she's on a break or, you know, or what. And sometimes she'll just come down just to tell me something interesting that she just did. And I'm like, but I hear your teacher talking. So like, you know, what's happening? And then it's like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be doing this, or how long is the break? I mean, there's so much to manage that like, we just can't help and support them. And when I have been next to her, I've noticed that, you know, well, all of a sudden we realize she can't come off mute because we're having technology issues. You know, she can't, you know, she's first grade, she's 6 years old, she's actually reading on grade level, but, you know, using the chat function to answer questions doesn't work for kids that age and younger. So what has worked, I will say, for us, and why I'm like, you know, yes, we're definitely doing this, is we've been at our school since pre-K 3. So this is our 4th year at the school now. And our school did something that really, really was great. And a lot of parents requested, since the teachers didn't move up, we said, will you keep the classes together as cohorts? So all the kids in the class, they all know each other. In fact, not only do the kids already all know each other, and I can really only speak at the elementary level personally, but the parents know each other. So there was one time we were all trying to figure out what Zoom link, what Teams link are we supposed to be in? And it was like 4 or 5 of us, and we thought we were waiting on the librarian, but then we realized it's Wednesday and there was no class, but we still thought we were waiting on the librarian. So we were like, okay, well, you know, we just talked about each other, like, okay, everybody go get a book and just share, you know, just share a favorite book. And like, they loved that. They absolutely loved it. And that really just was formed on the relationships that we already had. So one thing I am hearing a lot from parents is, even, you know, even among the younger crew, is people actually do still want to stay connected to their school communities. There are people, and, you know, Brittany and others might speak to this, who, you know, just what works for their household is to do homeschooling, because yes, this is absolutely a challenge. And then not only is it, you know, we can't monitor them, and there are, quite frankly, a lot of kids who, you know, if the tech issue comes up and nobody's there to help them, or even doing all the different apps. My daughter does not like the math app, and I had to sit there this morning. I was looking at her, and she was just getting frustrated. And you know, you can click on the thing, and it'll give a robot, you know, computer voice to read the question aloud. But that's not the same thing as someone sitting with her. And even all I did was read the question out loud, but sitting with her and being able to guide her, it's just a completely different experience. And a lot of parents want to do that, but people have to work. You know, people are pulling different directions. We have different kids to manage. So it's a huge challenge. And that's, again, even beside getting to the basic needs. But people do want to stay connected to their schools as communities. I know a lot of parents feel isolated in this. I miss seeing the crossing guard and the people at the front desk at drop off. I miss our aftercare coordinator. I saw her in the grocery store and I almost cried right there. Like, just seeing her, we recognize each other even with our masks on. So it's a real challenge for parents, and there are definitely supports that we need on the mental health front to juggle this, because, you know, there are absolutely times when I tell, you know, my daughter, we're not doing that because we can't handle this right now. So I'll Haitian and I'll let some of the other panelists speak to this too. But as a parent, this is as challenging as you think it is, and even more so, because again, on top of this, I'm looking at what she's doing and I'm like, we did that over the summer. So I'm like, okay, well, do I follow along, you know, just let her do what the teacher and the apps are doing, or do I push her further? Like, that's another challenge that we're having too, because a lot of parents are seeing that, you know, the summer slide was already a real thing. And even now, from the spring to now, a lot of parents are seeing that we don't feel like distance learning is going to get our kids caught up. or ahead of where they need to be. And so I think a lot of parents, are really trying to figure out right now, what does that mean? What do I do? Especially when you don't have the time because of work and other constraints to really contribute to that. But I'll stop on this and let other people talk, but I really want to make sure we are very, very clear about this. I don't care what the login numbers say. I don't care what the attendance numbers say. Parents in Ward 7 and Ward 8 care about their children's education right now. And a lot of people are really, really stressed trying to figure out how they can support their children, because a lot of parents really depend on the school. And so, people are really just trying to figure out, what can I do? And meanwhile, they have to go drop their kids off with a neighbor because people have to go to work, or they're just trying to juggle so many things. So I'll pass it to someone else. But yeah, it's a very real challenge. There are some bright spots. It's not all grim, but we need to support parents. We need to support families as a village, to help and provide, make sure that we have what we need to get us through this time.
Hi, everybody. I was just going to piggyback. I agree wholeheartedly with everything you're saying. That's some of the reason why I took my kids out of school, because I have a host of children in my class. I mean, in my house, from an 8th grader all the way down to pre-K 4. So last year, it was just ridiculous. Like, the amount of juggling I had to do to make sure everybody was staying on task, doing what they needed to do. And not to mention my 3rd grader last year, she hated being on the screen. So I had to fight her with that. And then my 1st grader, she needed help with reading, even before the COVID and all that stuff hit. So she needed extra support. So it was just a lot of struggle back and forth. And so I just decided, me and my husband, just to go ahead and take everybody out and just do things in our own speed, because we had been thinking about it before. All of our children, we knew that they weren't on the level that they needed to be for us. I mean, for what our expectations were for as parents. So we took all our kids back. I had my 8th grader. Now we have a math tutor that we had to go ahead and invest in. We have to invest in an ELA teacher for all of our children except for my pre-K 4. So it's literally been spending money that we really don't have, just to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. So I cannot imagine what parents are going through right now that do not have the resources to do these things and do not have a support system. Because I would literally, I have no idea. Like, me and my husband, it's me and him. We have a few people that can help, but there's nobody, especially during these times, to be able to, that is willing to help, knowing that they will be putting their life at risk. So you can't expect anyone to just be in these type of situations. It's rough. Like, just like Allison was saying, like, literally you have to take it day by day. And that's what I'm doing with all my kids. They tell me how they feel about something, and I'm going to listen to them, because they are going through a time that I've never been through, that they've never been through. So listening to them mentally and knowing and making sure that they have what they need physically is more important than trying to make sure a test is okay, making sure that they sign into whatever they need to sign into, and the attendance is straight for school. So I just made that decision on my part to just go ahead and take my kids out of school. Now my pre-K 4, he just got accepted into Ludlow yesterday. So I'm thinking maybe I might put him in, because he wants to be around other kids. And that's the other part. They want to be around their friends. They miss their friends. They miss their families. That's what the schools will have been to them. So this is like snatching a rug up under them and then expecting them to operate properly. You can't do that. So we have to all think about those things, and also think about what the teachers are going through as well, because they have to be supported, because they're trying to teach our kids and teach their kids at the same time. I can only imagine. So I've had to stop a few people from, like, just wanting to blast teachers. I'm like, you have to really sit back and think. They are trying to teach your children, maintain their household, and make sure everything is okay. It is crazy. And no one has any answers. I think we just need to give everybody a lot of grace, understand it, and you have to do what's best for your family and your household and be able to help where you can. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I would hope that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I'll say to that, we are prioritizing wellness over here. Like, that's it. We're prioritizing wellness. That, and yeah, the teachers, you know, a lot of us really do. We can see that y'all are working hard. I don't know how a lot of the teachers, like our teacher, I don't know how she's managing to do even what she's doing. So it's tough. So I do want the teachers to know a lot of us parents do see that y'all are putting in work and just really trying to make the best of what's a tough situation.
Well, let me ask the educators on the line. I know you meant, like, tell me about your experience.
So I'd like to just start by saying, as one of the educators, that it takes a lot more effort to teach in a virtual platform than it does in a classroom. It takes a lot more energy because you're dealing with your classroom management, and then some of the things that we took for granted, like writing on the board or all of the manipulatives that we were able to give to children and to be able to use in our classroom, we don't have that in our home spaces when we're teaching from home. So it takes a lot of energy, and teacher burnout can be very, very real. And so those folks who are on the line who are school leaders, making sure that we are putting things in place to prevent teacher burnout, and to always let teachers know how appreciated and how valued they are for the work that they do. Teachers are now learning how to really be creative. Teachers are having to be creative, learning how to use PowerPoint at a whole different level. I know one of the things that I incorporated in my classes, and many of our teachers at our school are incorporating in their classes, because we know our children need touch, especially our little ones. They need to see their friends. We're giving them that time to see their friends and talk to their friends before we even go into the lesson. We're giving them a lot of brain breaks where we're putting on music. Even in our classes, we've asked them to go get their favorite teddy bear, or we've actually given out teddy bears to the children so that we can take a moment and hug our bear, and that's a hug from the teacher, and that's a hug from our friends. And another thing that is really working is some old school teaching techniques. So, we've got really savvy. I remember, everybody was using the smart boards in class, but I'll tell you, one of my best friends in the classroom has become this good old dry erase board for my little ones, because no, they can't type in the chat. If they're 3, if they're 4, if they're 6, they're not typing in the chat. And they love to pull out their dry erase markers and write or draw pictures to communicate, and then just hold them up to the camera. One of the other things that has been working, or one of the shifts that we had to make as educators teaching literacy, and again, I primarily focus on the little people. My husband, who's here, focuses on the older children all the way through high school, is how do we now use manipulatives or how can we use more manipulatives in literacy? So our children got these lit kits or literacy kits, and we're going back to the reading rods, and we're going back to parents. Can you get your children, or can we give you all some magnetic letters so that your children can build words? So really making it hands-on, because we know that the virtual format is very draining for our children, because they're just staring at a computer screen. And if they don't have the blue light protectors or the blue light glasses, and even if they do have it, still there is a drain on the children. And I remember Allison just said, we got to prioritize things. And her family is focusing on wellness. We all should be prioritizing things. It is a paradigm shift for us to move into this virtual format. So the way we used to do things cannot be how we do things now. We do need to figure out what's most important. And I do believe, Allison, that the wellness of our children, the strengthening of our families is the most important thing right now. And the reading, the writing, those things will come, and we can do it, but we've got to be really creative about it. And we've got to be able to move, like Brittany said, with grace. We've got to be able to move with grace, because if we move like many school systems have been moving, where it's like, well, we've got to just focus on these test scores and we got to make sure our children are going to be stressed out. Our parents are going to be stressed out. Our teachers are going to be stressed out, and everybody's going to tap out and nobody will win. So how do we make ourselves win? How do we take this as an opportunity to grow stronger as families and to grow stronger as communities, where everyone is now invested in the well-being of our people? And what comes out of that is children are going to learn more. Families and communities and the school will now be an extension of the families. We're going to grow closer together. Another thing that we have implemented in our school is our teachers have these very short, just 30-minute weekly check-ins with parents. And during that time, we are sharing with parents, how do you teach this skill? So it's almost like teacher training for parents, because the parents are there to be the support to their children. And sometimes our babies, they're like, I don't want to do this computer thing. And so, mommy, can you help me? Or daddy, can you help me do this work? And making sure that what the parents or how the parents are supporting their child is in alignment to what the teachers are doing as well. And so, you know, just once again, it is a very stressful time for teachers. And if we are school leaders in the community, we also want to make sure that the teachers have the resources and the technology they need to do their job effectively as well. So making sure that they have, you know, good computers, making sure that they have good lighting, because again, how that teacher comes across to the children is extremely important as well.
I want to make sure I lift up a couple things that are in the chat, because I don't know if everybody's reading the chat. And I also see Delia has her hand up, so I'm gonna lower your hand, but I see you. So I want to start from, sorry about that. One person asked how comfortable parents are using the DC, and I'll read a couple of them off so we can just have a conversation. But one person asked how comfortable people are using the DCPS support centers. For people who don't know what that is, those are the 13 schools that the mayor proposed to open up, and they all will look a little bit different. The only one in Ward 7 is Kimball Elementary. So how comfortable are people with that? A question around how Ward 7 charter schools are similar or different with the supports they're offering around COVID. And I know we have a couple of charter leaders on the line who might want to jump in around that. Mentions around just how much work it is for teachers and needing that preparation time. Someone said their child is at Bard and she feels like the academics are just too much because they aren't taking into account that they used to have those transition times, turning in homework, copying work. Now they just want kids to be on the whole time and it's burning them out. I'm going to say that's not only happening at Bard. My mom is a teacher and she built in breaks to her schedule for that purpose. And she has little people, she has third graders. She also leaves her computer open so they can have recess together. Planning with less prep time, someone said, is happening, and modifying a curriculum for pre-kindergartners that's written for in-person learning. A lot of small group activities can't really work virtually. Her 3 and 4-year-olds love drawing. So thank you, shout out to the whiteboard. I'll stop there. And I'm sorry, and Delia, I know you had your hand raised. Was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll be really quickly, and thank you for the opportunity to share. Just wanted to echo what I think one of the young ladies stated. Really quickly, I can tell you my experience, and sorry, my dog is barking, but I have 3 little ones that are actually, we're homeschooling. One is in the 7th grade, then we have a 3rd grader and a 2nd grader. And it's just unrealistic in terms of the amount of oversight and support that their children need. And so my husband and I, we actually had to hire what I'm calling an educational support specialist to really just come into the house and help the children transition from one class to the next, and also make sure they're able to do their independent assignments. And so one of the questions that I have for DCPS leadership, and also hopefully for Councilmember White, is it possible for DCPS to subsidize or either hire more paraprofessionals that could actually come into homes and help support families that are struggling, or families that have children with special needs. I mean, I feel pretty blessed to be able to, bring someone in, but it's extremely costly, and so if I could get any support with that cost, I think that would be great. And so I know it's a lot of people speaking, so I'll pause there and let other people weigh in, but I definitely wanted to throw that question out there.
I want to comment on that too. Yeah, I mean, every family is trying to figure out how to utilize the resources they have right now, whether it's networks or, whether it's family, neighbors, like actual funds. So what ended up working out for our family when, this whole conversation about pods started happening, I was like, that doesn't solve our issue because we have a 2-year-old. Like 2-year-olds aren't potting. So what we did is actually we have a Ballou High School student who had been our babysitter for probably about a year, and we were trying to figure it out. And I was like, I wanted to know what was happening when my daughter was doing class in the morning. So I was like, I'm not sending, first of all, I was like, if I'm gonna get up in the morning, put clothes on, get everybody dressed, and have to take her somewhere, the only place I'm taking her is the school. I'm not taking her anywhere else. So so I was like, I wasn't, that was not a solution for our family. And there are a lot of people who just didn't feel like that was a solution for them. And I actually have talked to other parents at our school who were trying to figure out some kind of pod arrangement. And they were like, it just fell apart because people's schedules and just what they needed to manage for their own household, it just couldn't come together. But we ended up basically giving our babysitter an after school job. So she comes over twice a week and just plays with the kids for a couple hours. And then he and I have our time where mommy and daddy are unavailable. And that was an affordable solution for us that just gave us the break that we needed to get work done, to do calls, meetings, just rest, fold clothes, whatnot. But I essentially have given my mornings over to the kids. So I'm doing daycare in the mornings. He'll take the breaks and switch off, as needed. And and the first grader, she is constantly coming in. There is not a single day that has gone by that we have not both had to help with either the technology itself or just helping her navigate or figure out where she's supposed to be. She's sitting there talking about, I don't hear anything, and I don't see anybody. And I'm like, girl, you on the wrong day. You on Wednesday. It's Thursday. So now we got to go back and figure it out. So the kids the younger kids need a lot of support, and it takes a lot of parents' time. And one thing I think that should be lifted up, I think I've mentioned the opportunity gap. If not, I talk about it constantly, so I don't know if I mentioned this conversation, but yes, people are, leveraging what they have to get tutors. In our case, we're just getting a babysitter to play with the kids and give them a break. We already had our daughter in violin classes, so if there's anything she learns this year, she's gonna be real good at the violin. I know other families that are getting tutors in Spanish and we were at the park yesterday and saw an outdoor capoeira class. We were at a park uptown, not in Ward 7. So there's a lot of parents that have means are finding enrichment for their kids. And I think that absolutely needs to be taken into account, because when we could get back into schools or get to the end of the school year, we start taking tests or doing whatever, and we start saying, oh, distance learning worked for some kids. Well, did it, or was it that these kids also had other opportunities that they were engaged and participating in? So I think that's something that also should, be mentioned. But yeah, so I wanted to mention that in part of this conversation as well. Go ahead, Ebony.
I'm curious about the idea of the comfort level, because I saw somebody ask about the student support centers, and what are people thinking, feeling? Yeah, distance learning isn't working for everybody. And there are definitely huge gaps, whether it's opportunities, whether it's just tech, whether it's, people's capacity to manage their time between a 2-year-old and an eighth grader, right? These options now for in person, how do people feel about that? Do we feel like there are ways to keep kids safe? Do we feel like there are certain kids that need it more than other kids? Or is the answer that we should just keep virtual for as long as we need to? Like, what are you all's thoughts about that? I saw Brittany nodding.
My feelings have changed because I see the gaps with my children, so I can only imagine for children that don't have the resources that my children have the little bit of, how that's going to affect them going back to school, or even how the schools are going to deal with all that, because teachers going back to school right now, it's just so up in the air, because personally I wouldn't want to go back to school until they figure out what's going on. But then on the other hand, you have those children right now that are actually really suffering right now at home because they don't have resources that they can properly access. So it's a catch-22 anywhere you go. So you really, I don't know. I really don't.
I've talked with a lot of people about this, and I will say a few things. One, since I've been in a number of conversations with parents about this, one, a lot of parents that I'm hearing east of the river are saying, this is terrible, to kind of put it bluntly. At the same time, we don't think teachers should have to die for this. We think it should, if anybody's going back, it should be all volunteer. And a lot of people are still like, Black people are dying at the highest rate. And I'll tell you, even for me, myself, and also our, somebody mentioned for our school, like we have so many kids with asthma, like we have more health issues east of the river. So when you're talking about both the students, the teachers, and then by extension, the family members. So I actually do hear a lot of parents who are not so quick to rush back, but want some kind of solution. So I'll say something that I could see might be a potential, not necessarily solution, but I'll say opportunity. Before we start sending people back into classrooms, if we are at the point where we say it's comfortable enough, let's schedule on Mondays, first grade can go use the playground. Tuesdays, second and third grade can go use the playground. Like, if we can't even use the playgrounds at our schools, why are we talking about bringing people back to the schools? Can we set something up where people can go to the park? Like, I think a lot of people, like, if we just started with scheduling and coordinating play dates, because right now, one of the things that, I realized is my daughter, one of her best friends at school, is in the same grade but in another class, and I always saw that parent at pick up and drop off, and I didn't realize until now, like, I don't actually have her contact number, so I'm still trying to get her number. And so people only have connections with the people they already had connections with, and so not everybody's going to come. Everyone has different health concerns, for their family. I'll tell you what, we probably are medically lower risk, but I cannot picture, like, this is too much with me and my husband both at full speed. I know people who are getting COVID, and they have been down from 2 days to 2 weeks to 3 months. And the thought of either of us having to do our workloads, much less manage the house, cook dinner, because you got to give these kids all these snacks and then clean up after them and do the dishes. Laundry doesn't fold itself. I did a meeting earlier today and I was folding laundry the whole time on camera, unapologetically. Like, the thought of just one of us being sick with a fever and going down is not, like, that's not even worth it to me, because it would just be so damaging. So a lot of parents do not feel that the teachers should have to put themselves at risk. I'm for, if we're going to do something, we need to be outside or in the doorway, and I'm here for, maybe like the one sped teacher, one student, if both of them want to be there. But I think there are things that we can do, utilizing the spaces we have, the park spaces we have. I'll be interested to see what the rec centers, come up with. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like this, and we have so many people in apartments. I'm very fortunate that I can take my kids outside. We have a small front yard. and we have a path that we can walk around the neighborhood that feels comfortable. Everybody doesn't have that. So I do think there are things that we need to do to address family needs. That isn't, I haven't seen the plans for coming back to school. And if it's not being done with the teachers, and if the teachers have not signed off on it, I'm not okay with it.
Well, I'll say this. My mom teaches at one of the schools that's supposed to be a support center. It is all volunteer, I understand. But as someone who did not volunteer, she is not seeing the plan. So I have no insight. I will share though, in case it's helpful with all the snacks, a friend of mine told her kids, she started giving them lunch tickets because they were eating her out of house and home. So I don't know if that's helpful to you at all. I want to make sure I recognize that Councilmember White has joined us and kind of bring him into the conversation, because I saw a couple comments in the chat to see if he has thoughts. And we can totally just keep this conversation going, because I know a lot of it is why he joined. Councilmember?
I appreciate it. I just want to say amen to Allison. So I have a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old, and my wife, also works from home. So this balance is absolutely impossible. I tell people all the time, I'm gonna try to save all my complaining for the end, but at the end, I'm gonna do a lot of complaining because it's hard. But I want to thank you, Ebony Rose, for allowing me to come spend some time with you all. As many of you know, I sent a letter along with several of my colleagues to the mayor about the school reopening last week, because I've been asking the administration for weeks, what is the plan for reopening? What are we doing to the HVAC and ventilation? What are we doing about schools that have windows that don't open? How far apart are the desks going to be? And are we using spacers? Will PPE be available? What's going to happen if a student or a teacher contracts COVID? What's going to happen in that school? Are they going to isolate that classroom? Are they going to shut the school down? We don't know. But as I think you were saying this when I came on, Alice, this is a difficult calculation for us to make. So it's not just a question of, oh, the schools are open, so we're going to send our kids. Like, we have to balance this, the in-person learning that most of us would strongly prefer against the potential risks to our kids and to our families and people who live, in our buildings. And that's going to be a hard calculation. So we need time to weigh it. We need time to be able to ask questions and to really make that determination. But this is another point I think I heard. It has to be made in consultation with teachers. Teachers have to know what environment they're being asked to teach in. And frankly, as much as people keep saying, well, students aren't at high risk. Well, students get taught by adults. We got to take that very seriously. Like, teachers are not disposable. We can't ignore the risk to teachers or to students' families. So this is something I'm really concerned about. The letter that we sent to the mayor last week asked her to let us know by yesterday what the plan for reopening was going to be. Unfortunately, we did not get a response from the mayor. That's not a good thing. So we got a lot of work to do here. I do want you all to know that some of the council members share your concerns. We're fighting hard to get answers for you, for ourselves. So we're going to keep fighting. But right now, I'm very concerned that we know very little about what school reopening is going to look like, and I'm worried that we're heading down that bad path where we may open these schools and find that there just are not enough teachers or parents who are comfortable to send their kids back.
Oh, I am not muted. I want to ask, I know you all have a hearing coming up tomorrow, right? My days are running together. That's a side effect of COVID, at least for me. Could you at least share like what that hearing's about, in case even if there are people who didn't sign up, that they might want to just put their voices on the record?
Yeah, so please do put your voice on the record and to tune in. The hearing generally is about distance learning. And so I have not yet seen the testimony from the administration, so I can't tell you what the chancellor is going to be testifying to. But what I'm going to be pushing at the hearing is the perspective of facilities. What are school facilities going to look like? What is inspection going to look like? What is ongoing testing going to look like? But I'm also going to be pushing the issue of what the city is doing on, and this is something that Ebony Rose brought up to me, which is the reason it's on my radar. What's the plan for charter schools? Because there has to be some level of transparency there as well, because these are public schools. So we're going to be pushing all those issues. I had a hearing yesterday with the Department of General Services, which is the construction and maintenance arm of DC government. The hearing was about another issue, but I had to use part of the hearing to ask them specifically, what is your plan? What are you doing to prepare the school buildings? And there was very little they could tell us. They said they're working to develop a plan. I say, well, how long is it going to take to implement? We don't know. How much is it going to cost? We don't know. So I'm very, very concerned. I'm pushing as hard as I can from the council, but the city needs to continue to hear from you all. Ebony Rose is vocal on this, but whether it's email, Twitter, calls to the mayor, to the chancellor, please do make your voices heard, and please do consider submitting testimony to the Education Committee tomorrow.
I want to lift up.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes. Can I?
Right. Go ahead.
No, I see something in the chat. So someone wrote, Katie Norton wrote, my principal was told from DC Health after he and other staff were exposed to a positive school nurse, that protocol was not to inform the rest of the staff. Other teachers were in the building to pick up materials in subsequent days after they were sent home to quarantine. How can the protocol be not to inform folks in the same building?
Yeah, that occurred this week. And this is not our actual school nurse. It was a substitute nurse. We don't have a school nurse anymore because she's retiring because she's over the age of 70. So we actually don't have a school nurse. She's not on our payroll. She's not assigned to our building, but she was in our building to get medications organized for kids. She exposed all of the staff that we had at our building, which was our principal, secretary, another person who does our enrollment. She exposed all of them. She passed things, physically passed things to them. And so they were sent home to quarantine. They did not inform any of our staff. So subsequently, teachers from my building went in and picked up materials because we were told we could go to our classrooms. They didn't change that guidance, so people went in, and then we were informed at our staff meeting on Wednesday. And I knew because an AP told me, because I happened to run into her, but I wasn't even sure if they were going to tell us, because he said, yeah, our principal, he was like, yeah, DC Health said we were not to, because we were really upset. How could you not send an email? How could you not send a text or anything? And he said, DC Health says we're not to inform. So it brings up a lot of questions about once we reopen, or if we reopen, they're talking about only informing people who are within pods, and that we won't shut down schools, we won't shut down classrooms, we'll only shut down little pods because it only affects them. Some bullshit.
Yeah, that was exactly what my question was going to be about.
Okay.
My request, to the council member. And I mean, a lot of you all know, like I said, as someone who's done family engagement work in DCPS and been a part of the education scene and testifies every year at the budget hearings, I can't keep up every day with what's going on. And all I know is I saw that slide deck start scrolling down Twitter, and I was like, nope, log off. I couldn't even handle it. So a lot of us really cannot keep up with what is happening with the plans. But a question that I certainly have as a parent, and I know others will be, is just the communication. Will it be communicated out when it is known that people test positive in the building, staff or otherwise? Because there's a lot, I have a lot of questions about that. I don't know what is being said with regards to HIPAA laws, or because what what Ms. Norton is saying as far as DC Health says, that is not how I feel. And that is not going to build the trust needed to send my child back. I'm not sending my child back in the first round anyway. We'll give this maybe 3-4 months, maybe May. She can come back and take a picture. But my request is if you could really press on how often will people be tested at the school? Like, how often will people be tested, period? Because if people, if we're not going to be testing at the schools, there's nothing to prompt people to go get tested, especially with cold and flu season coming. Like, people won't necessarily know. So just, just the testing aspect of it and how that will be communicated out. How would you expect me to send my child to the school if I don't even know what will be communicated with regards to if and when there are positive tests?
So, I mean, this is exactly what happens if folks don't know and don't trust what's happening in the schools. I do think it has to be communicated across schools. Again, as a DCPS parent, I want to know if there was a positive test in my child's school, so I can, as a parent, take the action that I think is necessary. But we have not been able to get confirmation of this from the administration, and it's very concerning. Yet without this level of trust and transparency, the city is going to find very few parents willing to send their kids back. But also, we cannot let anybody hide behind HIPAA laws, because we're doing contact tracing. And they don't say who potentially exposed you, but they do let you know that you were potentially exposed. And so that there should be no violation of HIPAA laws here. We have to operate with an abundance of transparency, because when there's not transparency, folks, parents, teachers will not have trust in their health and safety, and they're not going to go back into these buildings. So I'm fighting for transparency. I'm fighting for access to testing, and most importantly, sharing information, whether it is what the school reopening plan, protocol for testing and PPE, and sharing information when there is a positive case in the school community.
Yeah, I want to call, of course, the dogs start. I want to call on Nzinga. I see she has her hand raised.
I want to pivot just for a second, particularly because to Kwao and Bashia, and I know that there are other educators who are online. I keep hearing like the general conversation is, oh, I'm worried about my kids being behind. And I have a niece and nephew who are 7 and 10, and that's a concern. At the same time, the entire planet is in this pandemic. So who is behind whom? Like the standards themselves are constructed. So first of all, who are they going to be behind? Because we're all in the same position. And then what does behind actually mean in the first place? But if we set that aside, and what I keep hearing in this conversation and in other conversations is how we have to focus on holistic wellness of children and of our families. And how can parents, aunts, other support groups who are, serving children who are doing either full-time virtual, full-time at home, or partially at home, what kinds of conversations can we have within our homes and with ourselves about how to manage, irrespective, and I don't mean to dismiss the level of pressure that we are engaged in to meet certain metrics that have been set by our school systems, but what advice can you give us to have the kinds of conversations to center the wellness of our children and the wellness of our families, and then allow the kinds of academic goals to situate in that once we've set that foundation?
Yeah, so I've had some conversations with the Deputy Mayor for Education about exactly this thing, because there's increased strain on students and on parents and families, and we all have to figure out how to address it. I'm not an expert, so I can't say how to address it. What I do know is that between our public health agency and our education agencies, they're going to have to develop a realistic plan for how we're going to respond to this, because we got a lot of kids and families in crisis. We got a lot of kids and families that are struggling to figure out how to manage their way through distance learning. And so this is going to have to be a significant pivot for our public health and our education agencies. That again, that's not something I can answer because I don't know the answer, but that is why we have agencies that really focus here, but we need them to focus. What I want to encourage you, so people sometimes believe council members can get answers to whatever they ask. I wish that was true. What we need to be able to be productive is for the administration to hear from more people. So you all kind of pushing for answers on this is going to get us a whole lot further than you saw. The mayor didn't even respond to our letter. But when you all call, tweet, email, and put the pressure on them, that's what's going to turn this dial. So I'm gonna keep fighting, but I do need you all to continue to be vocal on these issues.
Thank you, council member. I know that we have, actual educators and educators who are professionals in homeschooling and distant learning on the call. I know Kwao and Bashir from Wilson Baker. So if either of them have insights or any of other educators, I'd love to hear it.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Nzinga. You know, education has to be holistic. We've got to go back to the space where we are looking at the whole child. And when we talk about holistic approach and as a community, you know, a couple of things stand out to me first. One, making sure that our children across the board is getting adequate nutrition. And being able to create some space. I know that we have folks that are here on the line who are liaisons for family and community engagement for their schools. And so how do we create some type of forums where our families are learning about nutrition? And also, how are we making sure when there are families that are struggling? I saw someone put in the chat something about being able to have drop-offs where we're making sure that our children are still being fed. So nutrition is a really important thing. And I think that this is a beautiful time in our classes where we start to incorporate teaching our young people about nutrition. The other thing is exercise. So this is an incredible time for us to really call on our PE teachers and our music teachers and many of our specialists to make sure our children are still feeling joy. So I know in our institutions, in our schools, and even in some of our online teaching that we do outside of our school, we're making sure that they're having music classes, and we're making sure that we're doing virtual yoga classes and meditation, and the children are having physical fitness classes, and it's fun and it's engaging. How do we bring joy to these children in that virtual platform? These things are so much more important now than ever. So what are the things that we are doing to spark joy in the lives of the children that we are working with day in and day out? And then how are we incorporating the academics into it? So I know for me, I'm a musician. I make children's educational CDs. I do a lot of stuff with music and movement, but I use that to teach literacy. We use the music and we use the movement to teach math. We have lunchtime with the children, and we're talking about, hey, what is it that you're eating? I'm focusing, these are my proteins today. These are my vegetables today. Really becoming family, right? Really becoming family for these children in the spaces. So for those of you who are school leaders, again, many of you've got incredible music teachers or drama teachers or PE teachers, really being able to utilize them at this time and bring them to the forefront so that this experience can be fun. Now, for those of you who are homeschooling, maybe you've got an auntie or an uncle or somebody in the family, a brother or a sister who's into fitness or into wellness, and being able to have the children tap into that at this time. You know, let's do a Zoom call with Uncle Willie. You know, he's going to lead the family in some exercises today. So being able to put some things in place like that, for sure.
Can I lift something up that the council member started to talk about too? Because I realized today is October 1st, which means that we're in a new fiscal year. And Councilmember White mentioned there were other agencies that are also involved. So when we talk holistically, like I'm worried about like what DC Health has to offer, and I'm worried about what the Department of Behavioral Services has to offer families. You know, like I'm worried about what UDC has to offer. Like so given that the budget started kind of during that conversation started when the pandemic started, are there things that the city has put in place that might help support families as we respond to and then move to recovery that you know of? Or are there things that we're going to have to like fight for, or we should be keeping an eye out to fight for in hopes of some type of reprogramming at the end of the year?
It is, everything in DC requires a fight, unfortunately. I will say this though, when the pandemic started, it was not the estimation of our public health agencies that we would still be in this situation this school year. So, you know, planning didn't start in March for a distance learning this school year. And I think folks are, you know, understanding this pandemic, you know, a little more every day. But that's one of the scary things, is that what we understand about it, how we track it, how we measure it is changing significantly. But we have not gotten a lot of feedback, you know, as council or, you know, as parents about what changes we're making to distance learning. There also seems to be, and I'm still digging into this, there seems to be a lack of uniformity of what distance learning looks like from school to school and even classroom to classroom, because I'm hearing different things from different parents, and some of it is very concerning. So, you know, now that, and it's frustrating because it's hard to make a plan for an unknown. So, you know, now the mayor is saying, well, we're going to return to in-person learning in November. And, you know, what is that going to look like, right? Are enough parents going to be feel comfortable and safe to engage in it? And if they're not, that means distance learning is going to continue into next year. And so the resources are going to be very different depending on whether students are in the school building or learning at home. I got to tell you, I think there's going to be the majority of kids learning at home for the school year. That's my guess. I'm not the head of our public health agency, but you know, I'm using my common sense about what I see. And you know, I think that we're going to be in this situation much longer. So it is going to require a reprogramming to make sure I hope I don't mispronounce your name, but Shia, more focus on really kind of social emotional learning, on new and unique ways to engage kids. We're going to have to shift budgets. And so that's something that I'm going to be studying the DCPS and other budgets very carefully. You know, will we use less utilities? Can we use the utility money for, you know, X or Y programming? But these are questions that we're all still trying to grapple with. All the more reason that we need parents to be engaged, but we also still need to be engaged with our teachers. The Washington Teachers Union has done a really good job of letting us know, the council know the concerns of teachers, because that's something that's not bubbling up through official channels. So we're still getting our information very piecemeal. So that's all the more reason folks need to be engaged in the hearings and reaching out to the council members and to the administration.
I want to lift up a couple of things in the chat, and I want to make sure that if anyone else has questions or comments, we give them a chance, because it is 8 o'clock. You know, we do last call and we close out, because we all have to not spend all of our time on Zoom. No, go get in your bed. Dog children are bad too. Just know that. Laura mentioned they have a car caravan coming up, so a plug for that. Allison noted, just a note, that a lot of parents who have questions are trying to keep their heads above water, much less hold the mayor accountable. So we need help from all the aunties and uncles. A couple of thank yous, definitely amen to Laura on the car caravan. Kareem from Stokes noted that economic experts are discussing a 3 to 5 year recovery period for global economies, with the full focus of governments and corporations. In education, we should also be thinking about a long-term recovery, rather than thinking we are going to get a year and a half of standards met in the school year. things will take time, but during that time, we can also be thinking about how we are rethinking education writ large. And Allison says, and to all the educators, please do keep pressing the questions because that's on parents and students' behalf as well. Kareem put in a quick club for the UDC program. I know we have a bunch of school leaders on the call, so they are looking for schools to partner with. That information is in the chat, so please take it if it's helpful to you. And then I see details on the car caravan, which is meeting at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 3rd at Noise, which is at 2725 10th Street Northeast. Programming note from Nzinga. I think this is the last one I see in the chat. If anyone has resources and contacts about distance learning or anything else that the Ward 7 Ed Council can share out, please send that info to our email address because we will continue to share resources virtually. We are at 8:03. I haven't seen any more questions in the chat. I want to make sure. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to share because you all were looking for resources. So we have.
Oh yeah, I was actually about to go to you all. So I want to make sure since we're at about 8:03 that we go back and give the council member and our panelists get any closing thoughts from them because you all have shared a lot. And my guess is by the time we get through all four, we'll be hovering somewhere around 8:20. So I don't know if anyone wants to jump in first.
Sorry, is this closing comments?
Yes.
Okay, I'm being summoned for bedtime book.
So you should jump in first.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna jump in and then I'm gonna log off and just say thanks to everyone. Okay, so my closing comments, so just a couple quick things. So one which I noted in the chat, but yeah, that Kumba Kids CD is still getting us through. It is just phenomenal, especially because we have the Pandora, like one of the Pandora Kids playlists, and the lack of melanin produced, yeah, sorry. Uh-oh, what's going on with my camera? Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to shout her out because that's phenomenal, and both of my kids love it. My camera's acting up, so just pardon. And then, yeah, I guess really the closing comment I want to make is that we have to really approach this and say that we have to approach this from the assumption that families east of the river want their kids to be engaged in their schooling and in their education. And again, that doesn't just mean logging on. It means we want them to be learning and growing and thriving right now. And it takes resources, it takes time, money, and energy to do that. And people are doing that in other. Okay, thank you. Put it aside. People are doing that in other parts of the city, and we have to get resources over here because our families need it. And even the things that there's so much I think people take for granted. So, I mentioned before that I can take my kids out. We have a small front yard. We can go walk around the block to people. I talked with another parent at our school who has a daughter. Her daughter's going into pre-K 4, and the parent is disabled and has trouble walking, and they live in a high rise in Ward 7. And she was like, my 4-year-old is showing signs of depression. Like she doesn't have the support to really provide her child what she needs. And I mean, like, how tough is that to hear, when you look at your 4-year-old and see that they're suffering from depression. So I don't think that city leaders, I'm not going to say everybody, thank you, Robert, for joining us, but I don't think that the people who are our city leaders understand the urgency that is needed to address what is happening, in part because some people and their own families are okay, and they don't realize day to day what the struggle is when you haven't taken your kids outside for 2 or 3 days. You know what happens when you don't take your kids outside for 2 or 3 days? They go crazy and they drive you crazy. So we have to act. We have to increase the urgency to really support families from the basic needs to mental health, and expand this conversation on education. And then last comment on that too, broader messaging. I know this is mostly education community. I'm very, very fortunate to have an employer that's been very, very gracious about just approaching it in the time that needs to go to my children and to my family and to my own sanity. But we need a city like citywide, this needs to be more of a talk. We need more grace for everyone, you know, particularly for people, for working, not just working families, but just for families. A lot of parents are still feeling a lot of pressure from their employers. We need everyone to just back up and ease up. We are still in a pandemic, and anything that impacts parents and caregivers impacts students and our ability to show up for them. So I wanted to also just say, a lot of the support that we're talking about that really is needed for families also goes beyond strictly the school conversation. So with that, we're gonna read, and thank you everyone, and good night.
Thank you, Allison.
All right, and I say ashe, or I agree with everything that Allison just said. I did want to share, and I'll put my information in the chat, or our information in the chat, that we do have a company that is Kuumba Kids. It is a resource for families, for school districts. We do create educational learning materials, learning modules, learning music. We even have a lot of workbooks for our little people, pre-K through 13, not through 13, pre-K through third grade, a lot of hands-on materials for children to use. And so if there are school districts that are looking for some creative ways to engage their children, or even maybe if with some of our school leaders, maybe some professional development that might need to happen with the teachers around how to engage children in a virtual format, how to kind of flip the script, so to speak, and do something different than what we were actually doing in the physical classroom space to make this virtual space work better as best as we can, then please, 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 you know, give us a call. We are here to serve. And again, Allison, you know, you're absolutely right. One of the things, I guess the last word that I'm going to leave you with is we just really need a lot of grace. We need grace at this time on the government level, on the school district level, within our communities and within our homes. Thank you.
Awesome. I am not sure if oh no, Brittany, you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still here, still hanging in there. Kids running wild.
Did you have any closing thoughts, or?
I just echoing everyone else. Just please give everybody some grace, understanding, and just try to do what's best for your household and try to help others as you can. That's all I have.
Awesome, we appreciate that.
I just wanted to extend something off of what my wife Bashir just said, and also the question that Nzinga posed. Within this, I think the key word that I would like to use is opportunity. The history of our people within this place for 500 years has always been attempting to create lemonade out of lemons. We've been given the sour and the worst of everything, and now we call it soul food. But within that, we realize that each generation has to upgrade and make it better for themselves. So what I like to look at is the opportunities of growth and the opportunities of development and the opportunities of empowerment that we can create within ourselves, right? So there's a proverb out of West Africa, Senegal, that says, what you teach a child to love is more important than what you teach a child to learn. And I will repeat that. What you teach a child to love is more important than what you teach a child to learn. So during this opportunity, this is like a rare opportunity that we have as a community. The issues that we have always had, right? And we're seeking solutions to those issues, right? Black people are still being killed in the street by the police and by each other for the same reasons that there's a lack of value and a lack of love that we have been taught from the community at large, from the society at large, and now we have to do some rebuilding and rehealing. And what we all know is that we're not going to get the necessary information and inspiration to solve the problems of our community in school. We will get skill sets. We may learn how to read, we may learn how to write, we may learn how to do math, but that is not going to end police brutality. That is not going to end the homicide rate within Black communities. That is not going to end the incarceration of Black people. That is not going to end the highest unemployment group within America. That is not going to end our issues. So the schooling and the learning is one thing, But we actually now have an opportunity to have conversations with our children that we may have never had. We are all home together. We don't have football practice. We don't have basketball practice. We don't have to go to work and work overtime. We are all home together. And we have opportunities to really lean into our children, to explain to them the world that we live in, the world that they're going to have to encounter once they get past 18 and leave the school system. So the information that we can begin to tell them about they are valuable, they are loved, they are special, they are somebody cherished and here to be loved. We need to be having these conversations with them to work on their emotional being, their emotional well-being, their health well-being overall. So we have an opportunity to empower them with a sense of love for themselves, a sense of love for their community, a sense of love for each other, and then give them a healing way to deal with the trauma that we face on a day-to-day level. And then when it's time to go back, supplement that with the academics. This is an opportunity that we may never have again to really come together as a community, families, individuals coming together to talk about the issues that we have and come up with solutions and give preparations for them to do that.
I want to lift up the last comment in the chat, and then I want to have the council member close us out. Our school leader, our resident school leader from Stokes, Mr. Kareem Abdul, shared he would argue that quite a lot would be better if the right government agencies are focused on the right things. For instance, schools should not be the front lines for food insecurity, nor should police be at the front lines for mental health care. DC Parks and Rec needs more funding to provide greater recreation opportunities for communities. DCPL needs more funding to support literacy. UDC's extension service could be feeding more people with all the acres they have up in MoCo. If we defund agencies that are attacking the wrong problems with the wrong tactics and fully fund agencies committed to health and community, we might be okay. What we are doing now is not the path to justice and freedom. Councilmember White, I'm going to give you the last words because we are at 8:14.
Hey, I'm going to be incredibly brief, just to say thank you to you, Ebony Rose, for having me. Thanks for everybody for sharing your thoughts. I do want you to know I'm trying my best to be a voice for parents and teachers on the council. So I'm listening to you. I'm listening to your concerns and trying my best to get answers. So continue to be engaged with me in my office. We're going to keep pushing and trying to get families and teachers everything that you do need. But I appreciate you all allowing me to join you tonight to listen a bit.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It is 8:15. If there are others who weren't able to join us this evening, we will post this on YouTube so people can watch. I know Nzinga and others have been tweeting the whole meeting. So there's a whole nother conversation happening on Twitter, which Katie says is awesome. So check that out. Our next meeting won't be until November, and it likely will be over Zoom again. So we'll continue to connect with you all virtually. And if there are resources you want to share, please do send them to our Ward 7 Ed address. It's the same address that you got this invite from, because we want to share as many resources to the community as is available. So I thank you all. Please have a wonderful evening. And we are adjourned.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you, good people.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening. Thank you, everyone.